Hi, how are you? I'm Zita, your guiding luminary. Thank you for joining me today. As if this is your first time, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. I'm a life coach and intuitive healer, and many things I offer include coaching sessions. I also offer oracle card readings and other modalities to help my clients unblock subconscious issues to help them overcome them and move forward. And what I specialize in is working with clients who have challenges with life work balance issues, depending where they are in their life cycle. I also work with people to help empower them so that they can become better contributors to society. And finally, I work with people who are looking to go through different career changes. So they're going through a career transition. So they may be considering retirement, semi-retirement, or going back to school, or changing career. So these are some areas I specialize in. And today, what I wanted to do was address a very important issue of work-life balance and finding a happy medium to the big demands we all have in our life cycle. So it doesn't matter if you're 20 or 60 years old, we have different challenges. And what someone has at 25, we may only have them at 45, 60 years old. And what I wanted to do is invite and introduce my special guest who was or is a client of mine, has become a fast friend, my friend Stephanie Seymour. And like many women and other people her age, she was born onto this planet with this inspiration and dream to give to the community. She's a heartfelt empath and she wants to share her love and light with many people. So when she grew up and became a big girl, she went to school and got a bachelor's in social work. When she graduated, she ended up going out into the real world, got a real job, and after a few years, she was inspired to go back and become better because that's who Stephanie is. She wanted to give back more. So she got a master's degree in social sciences, and then she got even a better real job. And then, like many people who are as beautiful and caring as her, she met the love of her life, got married, and started a family. So here we are. And what I want to do perhaps is allow Stephanie to introduce herself a little bit, to share more about her beautiful life and her journey as well. Because I'm sure many of us, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, can probably relate to some of the things we'll be discussing today. So welcome, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining me. You're such an inspiration. I love your energy, always smiling, and you can barely see your eyes because your smile just reaches when you crinkle up, and it's beautiful, and your energy is wonderful. So, what's new? How are you? Perhaps you can introduce yourself a little bit and tell us where you were born, what inspired you to start your career, and let us know more about you.
Okay, great. Well, I grew up mostly in the Metro Atlanta area. I was born in the suburbs of Chicago, and we lived there until I was around 8 years old. And we lived a very cozy life there. And my father, my father lost his job and decided to um, take a totally new path. And we moved to suburbs of Atlanta, where he opened a business, um, and that didn't go very well. And he had lots of health problems, and our life went from a very cozy, upper class to a middle class that, but was really behind the scenes, struggling a lot more than people realized. And so I grew up with, just a really strong appreciation for work ethic and for, having appreciation for what you have. And, like birthday presents was always school clothes and, that kind of lifestyle where we were provided for, but my family had to work really hard for that. And so I also was just raised with a strong appreciation for the underdog and for justice. I grew up Jewish, so we always had really taught into us what you know how lucky we were to be in America and to have the luxuries and so forth of America. And a lot of what we're seeing in the world today, we were really prepared for growing up, that this is what could happen by governments. And and so, yeah, that's a big part of who I am too. But I, as a little girl, I was always what I now know was an empath, and I didn't really know why. I had a hard time fitting in and making friends. And as little as I could remember, I was put in a therapist chair, you know, trying being diagnosed with different things, when really I was just a little girl who was wanting to be loved and to love everybody. And I was just always very authentic and truthful. And so as a little girl, so much of that could be misconstrued. And I didn't realize I was, you know, what they label as anxiety and depression was really just a little girl who was just feeling so much and didn't know what to do with all of it. I also, you know, as I've made some changes in my life that we could talk about later, I've started working more on myself and my inner child. And a lot of repressed stuff is coming back, that now my inner child is beginning to trust me to share with me. I'm learning more about some tragic things that were going on that also played into why I was struggling in the ways that I was. So yeah, so I
It's really sad because the society is so quick to label
yeah,
children and people, and they don't allow you to be human.
yeah,
They don't allow you to have emotions. Children don't understand where these emotions are coming from. They don't know how to manage them, and they don't have the maturity either. So you may have been feeling these energies, but you don't know how to communicate that to your parents or teachers. And even if you could, they weren't probably able to help you because they're not empathic. So, and it's quick, they're so quick to stick you into a school therapist and then give you some medications and stuff when all
mhm,
they could have done is given you better guidance. So that's really concerning and sad where we are today. And but what was really inspiring is you use that as an experience from your youth to turn it around, and perhaps you can bring us to your journey, through your journey from when you were about 8 years old to what inspired you to move further and to help and go
yeah.
into this career.
Yeah, I definitely learned, you know, looking back, you know, I was seeing that there's like who's protecting the children and who's um advocating for the children. And even today we're seeing it now with kind of how they've been under attack through all this COVID stuff.
Mm.
But yeah, I grew up just everybody, you know, I was always the when people wanted to talk to about their problems, I was always the one helping people make decisions. I was always um you know, trying to give people advice and stuff. And unfortunately, I gravitated to the rough crowds and stuff. I was really insecure. I was bullied horribly. Struggled with codependency because I was just all love. I was just wanting to love everybody, and I was seeing the good and love in people who were not necessarily living that out in their human existence. And so I just would get burned, you know, all the time. And like we're saying, some, you know, some rough things that were happening at home was also making me you know, just seeking love in all the wrong places. And I had a friend in high school who got into addiction, and that really motivated me to really secured that I was going to do social work as my degree. Like I was always a little social worker. I was always like, that was always just my personality. And and then once I kind of experienced that, I realized that you know, he came from, you know, a good home and did not fit the stereotypes of what he got wrapped up into. And I realized like how easy it is for, you know, that to happen to people, and when they're not getting the love that they need. And so I went to University of Georgia and got my bachelor's in social work. And I worked in lots of different part of the degree is also to do some internships, not only just getting your education. So I worked in some nonprofit organization, different nonprofit organizations. One was doing like outreach in the communities to help like people who couldn't pay their bills, needed help paying their bills. And so we they would come to us to see if we could help them with that sort of stuff. And I quickly saw at a young age that also opened my eyes to poverty and to the culture of poverty. And I saw at a young age how we have a society that unfortunately a lot of people kind of are stuck in this situation because it's not really about there's not a lot to help them get out of that situation. There's a lot to keep them stuck in it, but not a lot to help them out. And so, and I saw that poverty, when I say culture, there's things we know growing up middle class or growing up upper class that they've had no exposure to, they don't have any understanding to. So it's like if you've lived your whole life an elephant and somebody says, I want you to be a giraffe, it's kind of like, can you help me figure out how to be that giraffe? And so there's not enough in society that's really helping them understand the value of being a giraffe, or, and so I saw that at a young age. And then I worked I also interned in a treatment center. It was called a wilderness camp for adolescents who had done some really bad stuff. They were majority actually sex offenders, but they were juveniles. So we called it was it like sexually reactive behaviors? They were acting out what was done to them. And the goal is when you catch it when they're young, and you can really help redirect those behaviors and help and identify the toxic beliefs that were taught to them to adopt those behaviors. And that, again, that was another experience where people are like, how can you work with those children? And like, how could, and I just saw children, I just saw, now.
Yeah, we need someone like you to help them, right? Because like you said earlier, if we don't catch them when they're younger, it just perpetuates, it's worse, because the healing just gets pushed back even more. So they become more aggressive because they're not healed. So that they become a nuisance to society. If you can.
Dangerous.
Yes.
It was it was fascinating. I saw just like I'm learning in kind of my awakening the last few years, and kind of touched on it with that topic on poverty, is we have systems in place that that create a lot of the disorders and dysfunction we're seeing in this world right now, and a lot of products of that. And so I didn't know it then that I know now, but I was able to kind of see through some of those things, and just see these children's souls. And I wasn't much older than them. I was in college. And so I was able to really connect with them and remember very clearly what it felt like to be a teenager, and all of those, how confusing that is, let alone when you're being abused. And then, so then I also interned in juvenile justice. And that's where I took my first job when I graduated, working in community corrections office. And I also specialized working with the sexually acting out, adolescents. And that was, that really opened my eyes to, again, how huge of an issue this is. And they're juveniles, so they're protected. It's confidential. And so it was, there's only so much of that you could take, knowing that this is going on in society, and you're really trying to help these kids and get them into treatment centers and help them be rehabilitated. But there was just generational issues going on in their homes. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then I knew it was time to move on from that. And I got promoted to doing the intensive supervision program in another county. And this is all in Metro Atlanta counties. And This, I worked with like the toughest of the toughest
Wow.
kids. And I worked with a lot of, there was a lot of corruption in the office. There's lots of issues. And I was trying to drain the swamp. So
Yeah.
they didn't really like me there too much. And I mean, I always called things out. I was always very authentic. I've always, whether in my family or in the school or in my work, I've been like kind of the black sheep, because I always say what needs to be said and want to call things out and deal with things. And now I embrace that as a strength. But, when you're young and impressionable, especially as a child, you know, it could be a really lonely road sometimes. And you don't understand why you're that way. You don't understand why you can't, why your foot keeps ending up in your mouth and all this other stuff. But looking back, I know that I was always on the right side. I was always, pointing things out that need to be pointed out. And I was always, doing what it needed to be done, and did my time in those different jobs to make the difference I needed to, and then move out. But because like I talked about, I struggled with the codependency. And so getting into the social work field, like you're really taught about those boundaries and self-care and stuff. And so you're really able to do it at work, but then your personal life could
Yeah,
struggle.
there's that always that delicate balance, right? So you go from caring from yourself to giving to others. So you're on this
Yeah.
side of the scale. And then you go to the extreme and you've forgotten about yourself, and
Yeah.
that's where you can personally burn out. And there is this constant swing back and forth. And depending
Hmm.
where you are, not only in your career, but also in your life cycle, I call it the life cycle. If you're 25, 35, 45, or retiring, it doesn't matter. That keeps swinging, and to find that happy medium, it's really
Hmm.
hard, because sometimes you need to give because there's an emergency. Like this happened when my mom was not well, and towards the end of her life I had to swing there and to take care of her for 4 or 5 years, and I knew I was going to be there for a very long time because I knew her time was limited. But I could feel myself burning, and I was slowly trying to bring that down to care for myself more. And someone woke me up and told me, Zita, you can't do everything. You can't take care of your mom, your son, yourself. And she says, why don't you hire someone to care for her when you're not there? Oh, I said, oh, I don't know. She goes, you know what? That would be somebody else who could care for her and love her. And I went, oh, what a brilliant idea. And the minute I decided to swing that, centered a bit, I got volunteers coming in. And because my mom was Polish, I got even Polish people coming in, the community helping out. And I did hire someone in the evening to be with her a bit more, because as her dementia progressed, she needed more and more attention that I couldn't provide. And I needed to balance her life a bit and balance mine. And then again, as she got sicker, it kept going back up, because at some point I need to be there and not others. So now she's gone, so I'm back to me. so,
Yeah.
so like there's this constant balance, although we consciously know this, especially someone like yourself with your credentials, sometimes it's not always possible, and you lose yourself there. And that's when you need to have
Hmm.
that person to say, Stephanie, Zita, it's enough. And like this person
Yeah.
did that. They sat me down. Actually, it was the managers from the residence. They came to see me. They said, Zita, we'll help you find other people to help you. And that's when I went, oh, other people noticed. And thank God they reached out. And they gave me a number. I called the community center. They found people, and it was just brilliant. But you're in that treadmill, and you forget where your limits are. You forget what else there is to do, and you forget yourself.
Hmm.
And, yes, women give more, but I'm sure this happens with men as well. So it's not just,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it happens to men as well, because there are men who are single parents, or they're
Hmm.
the only child taking care of an older parent. So it happens for both sexes, although maybe more a little bit for women, but it's something that's plaguing the society. And so I can understand your frustrations, when you're trying to balance that. So here you are in mid or your height of your career, and then you're giving too much, and now I guess you made another decision to make it tougher, and you went back to get another degree. Like, what
Yeah.
inspired you to do that?
Well, and kind of what you're talking about, when you also come from, um, a background where that was kind of reinforced into you, that it's your job to take care of other people. If you grow up with mental illness, your parents have mental illness or abusive situations, that codependency, that's where a lot of it comes from. And you get parentified, where you grow up really young, and it just becomes kind of programmed into you. So it takes, a lot of times, people who love you to point that out to you, or spirit will do it for you, which is what's happening in my life today. But yeah, so it was kind of a similar situation. A dear friend of mine who was a supervisor position above me in a different office, they were having a staff meeting, and he came out and he was saying, they're just talking about you the whole time in there, about all the feathers I'm ruffling, when really I was doing great things to help people. But there's just a lot of corruption, and I just was like, I'm so done. And I was thinking of either going to get a law degree or going to do GBI, which is like the FBI of Georgia, or get a master's in social work and be a therapist. And I had applied for grad school, kind of forgot about it. And I just kind of fell apart to him on this day. And I was crying. And to this day, he has no idea. Derek, if you're out there, you were my guardian angel. But he said, Stephanie, when you go home every day and you can't take it anymore, is it ever about the children? Do you ever go home and say, screw these kids, I can't take these kids anymore? And I said, that's never once happened. It's never been the children, it's the system. And he said, get out. It's going to destroy you. You're done with the system. And that day I went home and I had my acceptance letter to the University of Georgia. Yeah. And I was like, oh, there we go, God.
The universe, the timing is, that's incredible.
Yeah. So I quit with
oh my gosh.
I think I lost like 10 pounds as soon as I did that. And went to grad school. And in grad school, I interned in the school system as a school social worker. And I was working in, another important thing to point out is when I quit my job and I took a job in a bar through grad school, which was the funnest year of my life. And I made more money than I ever made as a social worker, working in this bar. But I remember I dealt with a lot of kind of shame that, what kind of, professional in her mid-20s works in a bar, like these labels, because I had wrapped my identity around being this young, successful, professional perfectionist. So that was a time where I really had to love myself and work through, labels that I had on myself, pressures that I had on myself. That was definitely, comes from my parents, as well, that, get an education, get a profession. My mom was a working mom, so that was really, and like I was saying, when my dad struggled with some health problems and his business wasn't working, my mom turned out to have to be the breadwinner in our home. So the direction my life took was quite a shift from what was modeled to me. But so yeah, so I got my degree and I enjoyed working in the school system. There were some pros and cons to it, but it was definitely a huge break from what I was doing in the juvenile justice system. You don't have the same liability that you had. I was working with some really good kids. I wasn't used to like typical kids. I was used to like the really troubled children.
Yeah.
So it was good to have that variety.
Kind of outcast them.
Yeah. So I always went for the roughest of the roughest. So, but yeah, I did that actually, once I graduated, I took a job in the foster care system, and I lasted about 4 months in that.
Wow.
And now that I know more of what I know that's going on in our systems and our child protective services, that is coming out more and more, I could look back and see that I felt that, I knew that I was in a very evil system, that really dark things were happening, and that it was trying to put my light out too. It was just not where I could flourish. I didn't know about frequency, and I didn't know about, I didn't
Energy.
really understand what I know now, that again, I'm sure I was put on medication and I had anxiety, and I've been labeled social phobia and all this stuff, when it was really, I'm going into environments that are low frequency, there's dark agendas going on, and I'm feeling energetically suffocated. But at that,
Right.
in that time, society wants to label you as the problem.
Right.
You know,
Always.
you're having a normal bodily reaction to,
Right. Well, that was the empathic side of you telling you there's
yeah,
something going on that's much deeper, but
yeah,
because no one really talked about it publicly, you didn't understand what
yeah,
this energy was, and if they could have been siphoning the energy off of you too, right? So that's why you were
oh yeah,
maybe lower drained and everything. So that was really really rough for you. And
yeah.
so what happened at that point? Did you like go back and continue working there, or?
Well, as pretty much as soon as I started, and there was a lot of corruption there, and I applied for a school social work job, um, and so I was kind of just waiting, and months had gone by from my interview, and then yeah, it seems like it would always happen when I just couldn't take it anymore, and then I just out of the blue got a call, and they said, "Hi, you interviewed with us. We have a position for you," and yeah, and I quit, and started in the school social work job. And the whole time, in this time of my life, I was also in a really abusive relationship, um, with, he was a total narcissist, and
Mhm.
was just, siphoning, like you were saying, all my light and love from me. And I was trying to save him, all the codependency narcissist dance, and
Gaslighting.
oh yeah. And
Yeah.
so I could just look back at my life, and there was just, I mean, the things that were going on sometimes in my life, but then the success I would achieve in work and school, it's really just like, holy cow, how did I even do that? But then when I look back at my childhood and a lot of the repressed stuff that's coming out, I'm like, it was so programmed into me to just take that emotion, shove it away. Um, what you need and how you feel, that's not a priority. And it just was really so programmed into me. And the fakeness of it all, the fact
Mhm.
my family was putting me in a therapy chair when they knew why I was having these problems,
Mhm.
and they knew what was going on, and they just were like, yeah, we're just this,
Easy
upper
go
middle
lucky family.
class Jewish family, we're perfect. And you're like,
Mm.
and so I was, getting the brunt of that, and I wasn't able to just function and pretend like everything was okay. Like I was having these issues, but it all got put on me as my issues. I mean, I was
It's
always
all your
the
fault. It's all your
yeah, I
fault.
was always the depressed, anxious one when I was having normal bodily reactions to a bunch of BS happening in
That's
my
right.
life. Um,
And
so it's,
also because
yeah,
yeah, when it's your foundation not there to support you, who do you turn to? If your parents and family are not there, that's what's really the difficult. It becomes like a family secret, right? Your
mhm,
family is the challenge, so you can't go tell somebody about the problem because it's almost like you're against your own family. Like, what kind
oh
of
yeah,
person are you? Well, the kind of person I am is I need help, right?
yeah,
And my family can't help me, so I'm looking to society to help, and then trying to navigate to find people who will, one, listen to your story and believe your story and help you with the story is the ongoing challenge,
mhm,
and fortunately, there's people who are strong enough to move forward, but there's others who become addicted to drugs,
oh yeah,
alcohol, eating, gambling, sexing, whatever. There's this codependent issue gone really wrong that happens as well in society. And these people, it's a desperate cry for help. They're not hurting anybody, they're hurting themselves because they're hurting
yeah.
and there's no one there to help them, you know?
And that duality was just always like, I never could just conform to that duality, like that just inauthenticity of, um, just how everybody kind of is, and I mean, I never was able to just go with, conform and go with the flow that a lot of people are able to do. But anyway, so I did foster care for a little bit, and then I got the school social work job and did that for a few years. And I eventually got out of my relationship with this guy. I just, got to a place where I had tried everything I possibly could. And I had grieved the relationship the whole time I was in it, pretty much, because I just knew I'm not meant to be with this person. So when I finally just was done, I got out of that, and was in a really good place. Looking back, I mean, I've kind of lived with PTSD my whole life, but again, I mean, that is a label, and I'm starting to kind of dissect where these labels come from that we put on everybody. But that I really had to work through from that relationship with him. And about a year or so after getting out of that relationship, I met my now husband, and I had, yeah, I had,
Some good news.
yes, yeah, he's my soulmate. I knew that. And when I had put out 3 things into the universe, I had said the next guy I date is going to love his mother, love my laugh, and love me exactly the way I am. Because my ex, and like, I'm always, well, not just him, but I'm always just like loud and over the top and all that other stuff. And I'm like, well, the next guy is not going to try to change that. The next guy is just going to be like, oh, that's my girlfriend. She's the one hackling in the corner over at the restaurant or whatever. Like, I always,
personality, Stephanie.
yeah. And it was always just like trying to be squashed. So I met him, and I was actually, didn't realize that my ex was actively stalking me. Like, I didn't realize I was a victim of being stalked.
Wow.
And so one night I was on the phone with my boyfriend at the time, and well, we were messaging on Facebook back in the day, and there was my ex would like just randomly like bang on my windows to at all hours of the night when he just felt like harassing me. And so I would have to go hide. There's a whole thing I had to do. It was totally normal to me, like,
Wow.
it's just so fascinating. Like, when I would be going through some pretty toxic, abusive situations, like how I just always was able to put like myself and my needs like on the back burner, like, oh, well, he's sick and he needs help. And so anyway, long story short, I was messaging with my boyfriend. I'm like, oh, my ex is here banging on the windows. I have to go hide in the bathroom. And he was like, what? That's not normal.
No, it's
And
not.
so and we had only been dating.
Or get out.
Right. And so so he's like, yeah, that's not normal, Stephanie. You might want to call the police. And so I was like, oh God, I just scared off the first guy I've had ever. And he's like, no, you didn't scare me off, but you need to do something about this. And he actually, that's when I went to the police and got restraining order. And that could be our next episode if you really want to know the outcome of that. But yeah, so like he instantly was like what I have been to so many other people, is like he instantly like just healed me. And he, like, I remember after a few months of us being together, I just remember saying like, I just totally feel like myself again with you. Like, I'm home. Like, and now I know on a spiritual level is because I was with my soulmate. Like,
yes,
we were contracted to find each other. Like, our fate was coming together when we met. So it's kind of cool to look back at that. But so where was I in my life? So he's military.
Okay.
So immediately, if you decide you're going to marry military, you have to have a serious conversation with yourself about your career, because it had always been me. It had been my everything. I was a young professional. I'd been so failed by humans that it was like I'd always I don't fail at helping others or giving back to others. I kind of fail at myself. and I feel it my
You
relationships,
lost
but
yourself in
yeah.
society and in relationships with others. And that's where the power of self-care comes back, eh? The self-love, to
Hmm.
remember that, often I touch myself, and I do that with my clients, so they touch themselves, and I use that as an example around their heart chakra. By pounding it, they feel it. Okay, I'm real. It's about me and my heart. What do I want? People forget that. A lot of
Yeah.
women do
Oh
that
yeah.
as well. So he got your heart pounding again, and then how long
Yeah.
did you guys date and get married then?
We dated forever, but looking back, that's what we needed because he knew the difficulties of the military life. So we dated throughout him going to trainings for long times. We dated through Afghanistan deployment. We did long distance, and then eventually this was also a huge thing that people couldn't believe I was doing, but he was stationed. I was in the Atlanta area still, and we met when he was stationed near there. But then after his deployment, he was moved up to Fort Campbell, which is like Kentucky, Tennessee border. And so here I am making really good money. We're in the school system, summer's off. I decided to quit that job and moved to Tennessee to be with him. And one thing I left out in my education, when I got my MSW, and then to get a LCSW, licensed clinical social worker, you have to do a certain amount of years of training and take a big test. It's kind of like a residency for doctors,
Right.
but so everywhere you move, you have to get that license, and you have to
Renew it.
do continuing ed credits. So just also as a military wife, if you're going to move all the time, that's also something you have to accept, that's something you'll have to do with your career. Like, and just because you just got your license and you guys are stationed somewhere, and then the Army says, well, you guys are now going to Kentucky, the Army doesn't care. Well, my wife just got her license. The Army's like, I don't care. So you really had to, a lot of women don't really understand that when they sign up for getting married, and sometimes their marriages don't work out because they're not able to let go of their career being first. And I did, and I took this job in Tennessee, moved up there, tremendous pay cut, but it was as an actual therapist. It was the best job ever with a nonprofit, so I wasn't in the system, and it was really great, and really helped others and learned, so much about myself. And then while we were up there, my dad passed away. This was 2013. And then he proposed to me like right after my dad passed away. And then we got married. And so I'm still working, and we're supposed to move to, we get married December 2013, and we're supposed to, what's called PCS, when you move to Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And so that was another motivation. We got engaged and married really fast. This is another thing you have to do in the military sometimes, is if you have like a PCS, you don't get to plan your own wedding. The military does. And so, so like we had to get that in before moving, because you also had to think about health insurance and all that stuff, because I wasn't going to have a job when we first moved there, because I had to work on the licensure. But we got pregnant right away. And this is what dramatically shifted my whole career priority, along with the military kind of starting that process. But we had lost our first pregnancy, and my husband was away in a training where I couldn't even reach him. I had to go through it by myself. I mean, you can in times of emergency, but you don't want to be that wife who pulls her husband away from this training he was in. And so that was where
that must have been really hard. That's something to experience, losing a child.
Yeah, it was completely unexpected, obviously. And that's when I really started my awakening, as I was really angry at God, and I just said, I'm not this person you think I am. I'm not strong enough to handle something like this. Like, why would you do this to me? Why would you, like, how much more are you going to put me through? And because I had this competitive, this is before I knew Christ. And so it was a very different relationship I had with God. It was almost like this disapproving father relationship I had, where I was constantly having to prove myself to him. And so that was my immediate, like, what did I do to deserve this? Where did I fail that you would take this baby from me? And so I I calmed down and I apologized and stuff and just said, okay, just whatever it takes, just make me a mommy, whatever it takes. And he said, okay.
Ask for it.
Get some reins, because I'm about to pull you on this journey. I'm about to turn some things on. And so, that really started things. I really felt like just, the overtaking of the Holy Spirit. I really felt like he just took me a hold and was like, I'm going to change your life. And I need you to trust me. And that's when I realized I had the relationship with God all wrong. In my opinion, I know everybody has their own views on it, but it's when I realized I never was good enough to do any of those things on my own. He was always trying to tell me that like, I'm right here, talk to me, ask me for help. And he kind of had to bring me to my knees for me to realize, like, Stephanie, we're not separate from each other. I'm right here. Just seek me. And whereas I always thought he was like this disapproving father, like C+, B-, A+, and really he was right there the whole time. And so he had to, like, bring me to my knees and me completely let go of control and listen to what he said I needed to do to have this baby. So I discovered some different health problems that I had that possibly played into the miscarriage, but it could have just been a typical miscarriage. But I found out about some different issues and realized I'm going to have to take it easy to have a baby. And it was like, how do you take it easy if you're a social worker? So that doesn't fit.
Or a type A personality.
Right. So So he kind of was like, and this has been my life, and especially lately, is I would have a history of him having to, like, really bring me to my knees to listen to him. Now I'm really seeing him and seeing he's, my guides are, like, so much more literal than I realized, and they're really there constantly wanting to communicate with me and direct me.
When you listen, the signs are there.
Yeah. But I just had a history of just compartmentalizing, blocking. But again, I was programmed to do that. I was raised to do that. And so, I had to, I realized I had to quit my job. And whoa,
that was a big deal.
Yeah.
The rug being pulled from under you, your security blanket, right? Because you've been a career woman all this time. So you had your own paycheck. So you were able to take care of yourself, and also, boom, giving that up. I mean, back in the day, 50 years ago, it was normal when women got married that they wouldn't work. But now with the cost of living, that's not always possible. And many women enjoy their career. So being told
it was my
can't
everything.
work.
And on top of that, I had to trust that my husband was going to protect me and provide for me, and he's not going to abandon me. And especially, like, what if I couldn't give him a baby? Would I not be good enough for him? Like, it was tough. I mean, it was tough.
But the good news is
I had a baby.
More than one. You had two.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stories behind. I really feel like God healed me in a lot of ways, because I was so because I let myself be so vulnerable, and I really listened to him and followed him. Like, a lot of, I mean, that's a whole other direction we could take it. But a lot of things that were typical of my diagnosis, I didn't encounter any of those issues. And just putting my family and having a child first, like so many doors opened up for me. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty fascinating. And as soon as he was, little did I know, like I probably needed the pregnancy to be difficult to quit my job, because I could not work and raise the son I was given. So if I had to quit my job once he was born, maybe I'd have resentment. Maybe I wouldn't have grieved it yet. I had my whole pregnancy to grieve this career that was like my identity. Like, if I'm not a social worker, then who am I? If I'm not serving others and helping others, then there's little old me like, hi,
Oh,
I'm
I do.
Stephanie. I'm your inner child. You remember me? But so it was a process. But once my son was born, he had a lot of health problems, and there's plenty of moms who do work through the issues my son had, and unfortunately, they may not have had the same outcome that I was able to have, because I was in several therapy appointments a week. I was doing well, and that started around age 2. But for the first couple of years, they don't want to like diagnose or jump into services. So I was doing, I was just, because of my professional background as well, I was able to tell what was going on. And what it looked like was like PTSD in a baby, because he had seizures as a newborn and had to go to the PICU for a while, and it was just so traumatic. So like what we later discovered was like sensory processing issues. Like everything was too loud, textures. Like he cried through the car rides, he cried in grocery stores, he cried in restaurants. It was incredibly difficult 2 years. And I would do music classes, tumbling classes. Like I was just trying so much to heal him and socialize him. I did all these mommy me workout classes to take care of myself, and that's always been a huge priority for me. And I mean, I would just cry all the time. We would leave one event from the after another, and my son was always the one crying through everything. I mean, and they want to call it, oh, colicky, or he has gas, but I knew there was something going on with my son. And you know, if I had gone back to work, this would have
missed all the cues, and you would have
it
missed
would have gone
everything.
through the cracks. Yeah, he would have just been that troublesome baby in the daycare. And so not only did I didn't miss any of the beautiful memories, the first of everything, and the first cartoon he giggled at, and you know, his favorite
smile, and the
yeah,
giggle, first burp. Yeah, beautiful.
yeah. And I mean, I never in a million years thought I would be a stay-at-home mom, but I know, like, God, you know, the series of events happen is because God chose me to be his mother, because I would be able to provide for him everything he needed to be healed. And I would be gracious and happy to do it. I mean, I felt so thankful that he chose me to be his mommy, and that you know, it just, yeah,
You were there.
yeah, it was tough, but we started services around 2.5, and we were, again, a working mom couldn't have done what I was doing. I mean, that's when we started all the appointments. We were in OT, speech. We saw a psychologist to help with like just it's really hard when you're parenting that sort of stuff to know the difference between, is this, you know, is he misbehaving, or is this part of his sensory issues? And that was wonderful. I was doing online stuff. We did this integrative listening system with headphones. That's fascinating. Did binaural beats to heal the brain. And I was doing all kinds of activities at home for like reintegrating the reflexes. And I mean, I was a full-time healing my child. That was my full job. And he's how old is he now? 7 years old, like typical child. He has this quirky stuff going on.
But who doesn't?
Right. yeah, it's so much of his personality, but he knows all the coping skills to work through difficult times and when he gets triggered. But it's absolutely, anybody listening who has a child with sensory processing knows, I mean, just new shoes, new clothes, going anywhere, a change in the routine. It was really, really tough. And oh, speaking of which,
There we go. There's number
there's
two.
my daughter.
Daddy home.
Oh, okay. Will you hang out with Daddy so I can finish this? Will you pull the door closed? Thank you, baby. That's Eleanor.
She's adorable.
That's baby
the life
number
of a
2.
mom. That's a life of a mom. That's adorable.
Yeah, so that was a huge shift that I know a lot of moms listening, like, that's really difficult to make that decision, that to leave your job, to put full faith your husband's going to provide for you, and then will I be bored or whatever. And God was like, you're not going to be bored.
No.
You're not, I'm going to give you a job. And sure enough, I mean, it's fascinating to look back at it, that's why, I had to quit early on in the pregnancy, because he knew it's going to be a long road, but it's going
Isn't that
to,
amazing how that works out? We don't know
Yeah.
at the moment in time why we lose
Yeah.
a job, we don't get the house, or we don't get into the program we want to in school. It's only in hindsight, after, when we look back, we realize, oh, I'm glad I didn't marry that person, or I'm glad I didn't go
Yeah.
into that school program, I didn't take that job. But in that moment in time, it's difficult for us to accept that it's not for us, that door's not going to open,
yeah.
no matter how hard you bang on it.
Yeah. And you have to, now at 43, after a lot of different times in my life, like, I'm really starting to listen to that voice, and trusting it, and knowing that loving voice that you hear, that may not make a lot of sense, that's God, and that's him directing you. And then all the fear and but you're going to let everybody down, or how you're going to pay your bills, or you're going to be so bored, or all these other things, that's the ego, and that's what you've always known, and that's based on your past experiences. And so we want to confuse it and complicate it, and say, well, what does God want me to do? What's the right thing? And it's like, what's that first loving thing you hear? Like, baby, you need to quit your job so you can make a baby. Like,
Have a baby.
yeah,
What's the
like,
priority? See, that's the thing, right? In our life, we need to find what's important at that moment in time. And that moment in time, if you're gonna have a baby, it's not a moment. It's like 20 years of time, right?
Right.
So it's a big decision to invest that energy into that decision, because it's a long-term decision. And so here you are, you made baby number 2. We saw her.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
didn't stop. So the first child didn't discourage you. You went on and had a number 2, and like, that's not enough. You are also involved in the social work. You went back out to work in the community in your own way, to give back, because you don't have enough to do as a
Right.
mom with 2 kids. And maybe you want to share a little bit what you did there to complicate your life even more, or make it more exciting.
Well, I mean, once things simmered with my son, and then we had, well, she was born in the throes of a lot of it, but anyway, yeah. So as we kind of progressed through that and got him some really great help, and then he was born in North Carolina, and then we moved to Florida for our next station while I was pregnant with my daughter, and then she was born, and then we did most of his services there, and then now we're in Monterey, California, and that was the next phase of my awakening. Like, I think, like, having my son and children, that was what opened my eyes to Christ's love, and that's what really shifted my relationship with God in that aspect, and reconnected me with God, and in so many different ways, and just shifting that relationship. But then moving to California in the throes of COVID is what then began my spiritual awakening, and my realization of what I knew so much working in this system, like a lot of the corruption that's purposefully there, to really disempower us, to segregate us, to make us lose sight, of our interconnectedness with God and with each other.
Absolutely.
And there's so much that we wouldn't even need in this world if we all truly embrace that and the golden rule. But I'm sorry. Oh, I thought you were
No, yeah.
So the spiritual awakening, when you go from in Florida, and I don't want to go a political route with this, but in Florida, they had a certain way of where we were dealing with COVID. There wasn't the restrictions, and there wasn't this fear being pumped out, and there's still a sense of community where we were, and we were all dealing with it together. And then when I moved to Monterey, it was a total
different community.
Yeah, and the frequency, and again, I didn't know this language then, but I felt like I was walking through like quicksand, and it was like the Walking Dead, and it felt like the people who were, it seemed like an atomic bomb had just gone off, and I was amongst the survivors. And in the South, and I don't want to generalize, but in the community we were in, like, it was, you smiled at you smiled a lot, and you shook hands and opened doors, and you spoke to your cashier, and it was a very personable, friendly, interactive community. And sure, COVID changed that there too a lot, but at the point when we were there, it hadn't. Things were just pretty normal. We were all a little freaked out and didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But then when we went to California, it was like, ah! And so that's what really opened my eyes to freedom. Seems to be kind of relative. Like, it's not what I always thought it was. Like, whoever is in power seems to hold the reins on your freedom, and that's just disgusting, because that's not true. We are freedom. And so that opened my eyes to that world we're in, that whoever's on the TV screen or whoever's in office, really has the power to really control us. Yeah, right. And so it woke me up to so much. I started on this long journey of and the other thing is, I had always been on antidepressants for all of was really just being an empath who wasn't knowing how to control it and knowing what was really going on. And well, I'm clinically depressed. Well, in reality, I was feeling a lot of the collective, or I was feeling a lot of, the different people I was surrounding myself around. I mean, a lot of times I just kind of feel what's going on in the world. And I have days where I'm just like so anxious, and I'm like, what is going on inside of me right now? Now I know more about that. But at the time, you just stick the person on medicine. And so anyway, so coming to California, I decided, well, I'm going to try the natural route again. I had in the past, and it's not as easy. You actually have to do the work. You don't just have a pill that takes it all away and stuff. And so that was another part of my awakening, is I found a natural path, and I discovered the big pharma trap I was in, where I was taking medicines that were causing issues. So they put me on another medicine to fix those issues. And I discovered food allergies I was having, and I just had a huge awakening. Now I know that was also God preparing me more and more for what's coming, and for my own ascension. I had to get that stuff out, all that medicine out of me, so that I could feel what I was needing to feel. And now I'm at the place where it's like, now that I've cleaned a lot of that junk out, now it's a lot of the repressed stuff that I'm needing to now it's like I have the strength and then the confidence to deal with a lot of this repressed stuff with gratitude and compassion, where I couldn't have done that back then. If I knew some of the things I'm starting to be aware of, I wouldn't be able to handle it this way.
This is nature's way of peeling that onion, right? We talked about that, where the darkest part of the onion is the actual skin part, right? And that's where the biggest pain is, and that's why we stop there. We don't want to peel the onion. But as we peel the onion, the outer layer, the first layer is the thickest after the skin. And then when you have the courage to peel that layer, the next layers get smaller and smaller and lighter and lighter. So that I use that analogy because I think it's brilliant. It represents any struggle we may be going through, that you need to face that dark shell of yourself
Hmm.
and peel. And
Yeah.
the more you peel, the more layers come out. But if you understand that at the end of the light of the tunnel, if you can use that
Yeah.
analogy, there's a healing process, so you keep going. And
Hmm.
that helps tremendously, understanding and knowing that. And also, you need a good support system to help you during that process, because
Yeah.
as you peel those layers, you end up encountering things you had no idea were there, like hidden in
Yeah.
the shadows. So that's where that shadow work comes in. And the shadow work can be so deep, it can go back to your childhood, but it can go back to previous lives, and it can go
Yeah.
generationally, right? So
Oh
you
yeah.
need to learn where, maybe not learn is the right word, but understand what is yours and what isn't yours, and what did you inherit. So that's why
Yeah.
many times you see people who are alcoholics because their father was an alcoholic, or their mother was an alcoholic because the grandparents were alcoholics, blah, blah, blah. So there's this vicious cycle. And I'm seeing now there's a lot of people, because they're more awake, are conscious, are able to say, okay, that's not mine anymore.
Hmm.
I need to push it back and say, okay, this is for me to deal with. You need to look at it, you need to process it and observe what's going on, because you need to feel the feelings, because like these antidepressants were blocking you.
Oh yeah.
So you don't
Yeah.
feel, you feel numb.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
you can't think, you can't feel, you can't act, and you can't plan, you can't move forward. So you're stuck. And then because you're stuck, they end up raising your medication levels because
Yep.
you need more. So it gets worse.
Yep.
So,
And
you
God
know,
gets quieter. Like
yeah,
it turns it all off. It really
exactly.
does. And the more, the deeper you get to the onion, the more also when you get rid of all that noise and all those layers, the more you do hear God and feel him, and you could delineate that is God's voice. That's my ego. That's my trauma. Um, but yeah, so that was all part of it. And so you had asked about, so I've always been involved, wanting to be involved in the community in ways that I can. And I hadn't actually in a while, because I was in my comfort zone in Florida. I was with like-minded people. I was so God had to move me where he needed me. But that's what started my spiritual awakening, is to be taken completely out of my comfort zone, to see what's going on in other parts of the world and so forth. So in addition, that's when I started volunteering with different things that I'm passionate about, and I put in a little bit of time into that. And then when I felt that it was reaching a boiling point, I would shift to something else. And so right now I was really involved in a group um, that the main focus was health freedom, because it was a lot of people who were losing their jobs and their freedom from the mandates and
Right.
stuff. So we I got involved with them and was doing a lot of different activism that was really rewarding. And really, I'd feel on top of the world when I was doing it. And then also, we've had struggles at home, because as I've been on this awakening journey, me and my spouse, we've grown apart in a lot of ways, because he's not in agreement with my changes in my views. So doing a lot of this activism was also an escape from that,
Mm-hmm.
and not having to deal with that, and to be around like-minded people, which is very important. But again, you have to have that balance. And but yeah, I mean, you were talking about the dark night. I mean, it's just been since we got here, different things. But again, on a soul level, I know all of this was necessary to cure me of my codependency,
Mm-hmm.
because I learned I can't run to my husband to tell me all the answers and tell me it's going to be okay, because he doesn't agree with me on the things that I'm learning about and the things that are important to me now. So I learned I had to find that within, and find that with God, kind of dissect that stuff. So it's all made me stronger, and the different activism. And so if I was still in my comfort zone back in Florida, I would never have gone through this growth that I had. But so where I'm at now, sorry.
Nope, I didn't say anything.
I keep hearing something, but yeah, so where I'm at now is I've been having quite obvious things happen that I feel that God is really wanting me to focus only like on myself and my family right now. And like we were just talking about, like my inner child is speaking up more and more, is trusting me more and more, and is sharing little things about myself. And I've been learning about past lives and about a lot of ancestral stuff that I'm clearing and dealing with. And I can't save the world and do that stuff and work on that. And so there's been some pretty funny things where we've joked, and I said, I think like all my guides are very literal men or masculine, because it's just sometimes I'm like, can you just be a little nicer sometimes? Like you're so
like I said earlier, they were being nice with you, but you weren't listening.
Right.
So they needed to get your attention. So tell what happened to you last week, because this was a typical experience I personally lived as well. We talked about this before going online, so maybe you can share what happened to you last week for you to wake up.
Yeah. Well, the first was I was planning. I get so much out of doing like different rallies, like peace rallies and stuff. And I had coordinated some stuff, and I coordinated one with several other organizations in the area. So it could have had hundreds of people at it. And everybody was excited about it. It was like called Unify Monterey. And because I'm really feeling, what the collective is really wanting is a place to go. There's so many new awakened souls everywhere, and they're not knowing where to go. And even those, especially with the political shift from COVID to Ukraine, Russia, there's a lot of people who are diehard mask lockdown people who really all of a sudden were feeling abandoned. Like, where'd this narrative go? I built my whole reality around my government controlling my air and my freedom. And so there's all these newly awake, because that's what did it for me, is I had to be gut punched. We didn't go into a lot of detail, but to question and dig, and that's when I dug more into big pharma and other things like that. I mean, it took some gut punches. So I was really feeling, guys, there's so many people in this community. Let's give them a home. Let's do these rallies. Let's do them regularly and stuff. And so I was coordinating that, and I show up, and out of like hundreds of people, it's me and one guy in my whole organization who wasn't even supposed to be there. He said he couldn't make it, but at the last minute showed up. And I'm like, it's like you're hearing crickets, and you're like, why?
That's a message.
Yeah, it was so weird. And then there was a few people who showed up, these wonderful people that I talked to for a while from another club, but we're talking several large organizations in the area. And there was like 5 of us standing around just like talking. And I'm like, okay.
From a rally became a conversation.
Yeah. And I'm like, and so it was almost like he was saying, I'm going to make things not work out and make it so you don't want to do it, because this is not where I need you right now. Because it was so obvious, like, what is going on? Like, it's not possible hundreds of people all had somewhere else to be that day. It was just so weird. It was like, it was the weirdest thing, but you just know, like, okay, you're not wanting me here right now, are you? And then the next thing was another organization I'm in, and I didn't tell you the whole story. So I hold a position where I'm over like the raffle. And so every luncheon we have, you could buy lottery, like raffle tickets. And then we have items people have donated, and you could like buy a certain amount of raffle tickets and put it in the box of the item you want to pull a raffle on. And it's a fundraiser. And so then at the end of the luncheon, I'm supposed to go up, and I grab the box for item number 1, and I draw a number, and I say, I say number 439, and then Susie runs up, oh, I won. So that's supposed to be my job. And I've been doing it for a few months now. And the last couple of months, the the president, she'll walk over to the station, and she'll introduce, she'll say, now it's time for Stephanie to do they call it the opportunity drawing. It's like a PC term for raffle. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But anyway, and so she'll just keep doing, like, she'll keep doing the raffle, even though she's saying, Stephanie, it's that it's my job to do it. But she'll come over and she'll say, okay, so item number 1 is da 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 da, and describes the item. And then I go and pick up, like I'm Vanna White or something.
Yes.
I go and pick up the box and I hand it to her, and she draws the number and she does the whole thing. And in the past few months, I just kind of follow her along like her little Vanna White. And then finally this month, I was like, this is supposed to be my job. And so this month, she did like the first couple items, and then literally on item number 3, I didn't pick it up. I just stand back, and she didn't even notice that I was just standing there and didn't hand. She just went and got the box for the 3rd item, and she just took over, and it was 7 items. So I'm literally standing there as if, kind of like you were talking about in that other show, as if I became invisible.
Yes.
Like she forgot.
Your vibration changed.
Yeah. And I just stood back and was observer, and I'm like, and I go, I'm not needed, am I, God? I'm not needed here. You're literally, figuratively, literally showing me I don't need you here, Stephanie, because this woman just did my job and then she made me invisible.
She completely ignored you.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, I mean, if I'm so needed, and my ego's saying you can't resign, you're letting them down, and this, you agreed to this, and da 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 da. That's all your ego. But like God was literally showing, like, no, look, you're standing there. She's doing your job right in front of you, and then she forgot you're even standing there. Is this really where you want to put all your time? And I'm going to make it really uncomfortable and weird, so you listen to me.
That's the only way you see. This is the shakeup, right?
Yeah, it was so funny.
The Vanna White first time you should have heard it, and that was the gentle coach. For a woman with a master's degree in social work to be passing bucks around, and they tried to tell you, but you didn't listen. So
yeah, but when I'm passing boxes at a luncheon, talking about political stuff, I'm not dealing with me, and I'm not dealing with my inner child who's like, I'm finally talking to you. And so God's just making really silly things happen. And then after that, so I was pretty shooken up about it. And I was in the parking lot to get my kids from school. And I was really shooken up, and I was all in my head about it. And I'm practicing how I'm going to resign and all this stuff. And then I'm not really paying attention, and boom, I crash into a car. And I'm like, okay.
There's your bang. That's the masculine energy that came in.
Yeah, they're like, I'm just gonna have you sideswipe this car because you're still
not listening.
Yeah, and you're still in your ego. Like, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to close a little bit because.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So in closing, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? No, just kidding. What are you planning to do now? Like, no, like in a minute or two, just to wrap up a bit, because we've gone a little bit over time.
Oh, that's easy to do with me. You knew that. Yeah, I'm just in a great place where I'm working on me and journaling.
You're going to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Which brings me a good point to perhaps read you a card.
Oh, please.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So for those who know me, know I love cards, and I usually do a lot of client readings to help them with their challenges. And this one's called the Self-Love Oracle by Janet Chewy. And I got this for my segment for self-help and self-love. It's a beautiful soft deck. And I clear it before coming online. And what I do is I normally knock the deck to remove any previous energy, and then I just shuffle. And I wait for the first card to pump and jump and flip. And there we go. So this one's called create.
Oh, wow. Oh, is she pregnant?
Well, it's funny you notice that.
Don't give me a pregnant card.
Everyone has the ability to create a life of joy, in our birthright to manifest our desires, our hopes, and our dreams. So if you so desire to have a child, maybe this is why, like you did, stop working with the first one. You're being taken away from this other work, which is distractions from what you need to focus on.
Yeah.
And we don't know. Are you going to birth a child? Maybe. Or you're just birthing a new adventure, a new journey
Yeah.
in your own personal life. Because if you can see, she's holding flowers, and everything around her are flowers. And it's even like that onion. You could almost see it opening up, the flower, and you're in the middle. So you're that honey, that nectar that the bee would come and join you, because you are the creator of your life, right? And the universe is working with you to create your next phase of your journey. So isn't that amazing? So you're being invited to co-create
Yeah.
the next chapter of your life.
That's so appropriate. That's really where I feel I am.
Yeah.
Like just
And what's
cleaning all that out.
Yeah, so I could feel all this energy around you. You could feel the fire, the reds and the oranges and the yellows, because you have this fiery personality, even the red hair. You know what I mean? You have red tint. So this is little you, the little you who's looking to do something different, a new birthing process, a new journey, a new adventure, because there's
Yeah.
more for you right now than handing out boxes. So with that, I'm going to close our interview here. This was such a delight. You're
It's
so
fun.
much fun to listen to. You bubble up all the time. You have a lot of positive energy, and I would hope you can join me again on my channel, and I'm sure the viewers will appreciate you. So if there's anything else you'd want to share with your clients, with my viewers, is there a word of advice you'd want to give? Because I can give plenty, but I thought I'd share this with you, so I'll allow you to share. And based on your experience, what can you share in closing?
I guess the biggest lesson I'm really seeing throughout my life, I didn't so much recognize it as much then, but I find that if I'm always trusting that truth and following it, even if you're standing alone, sometimes when you are doing what you know is your truth and feels right inside of you, it's because you're being guided to something that much greater. And when you trust that, you don't try to figure out what that is on the other side or control it, but you just stay in truth and you say, no, that's not okay with me, I'm going to leave that job. And no, that's not okay with me, I'm going to do this. But you do what you feel is truthful. Quit your job to make a baby if you heard in your heart, like, this is what I need to do to make a baby, not how are we going to pay our bills, we can't go on vacation. If you just focus on that truth, what is that loving first thing you heard inside of you without any of the fear, doors open in ways that we can't even imagine. And for us to try to think we could imagine what God has planned for us, we're not God. We're not this, perfect, all-knowing source. We can't do what he could do. We're not, meant to know what everything. And so just staying in that truth is like really trusting that it's just, you get so many rewards and things, you're just constantly led in the right direction when you're always doing what's right. Like people who quit their jobs during COVID, I know some people, they're getting these new great jobs because
Better
they did what
paying,
was
probably.
right. Yeah, like a
Better
friend of mine.
paying.
And I'm like, that's perfect example. You fearlessly did what was right and put your body, what you wanted to do for your body, right. Right. And that's the biggest thing I learned is if you could do that,
Excellent.
that's where the magic happens.
So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you so much, Stephanie. It was such a pleasure having you. So I would encourage all the viewers to like and subscribe, and your comments would be greatly appreciated, because I'm sure there's a lot of colorful information you could share with my dear friend, Stephanie. Thank you. And
Thank
we'll have you
you.
back for sure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Fun.
Bye.
Bye.